Southwest Topeka has a good neighbor. State Farm agent Jim Garrison, now at 29th and Urish. If your current insurance situation has you going around in circles, get off the roundabout and stop in and meet Jim and his wonderfully efficient staff. Let Jim Garrison give you a quote and make the Garrison Comparison. He's confident that with State Farm's competitive rates, the right coverage, and his unmatched service, you'll want to make him your new insurance agent. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, and Jim Garrison is there for you, northeast of the roundabout at 29th and Urish.
When someone has a passion for what they do, it comes through in the product they provide their customers. Just ask LaRocco's Pizza's new owner, Jason Johnson, about their crust. They make it every day and let it rise for a minimum of 24 hours before they use it for their pizza. And his staff doesn't want to do anything they won't be the best at, and you can taste it in their pizza. LaRocco's Pizza, just a half block north of the I-470 and Gage Boulevard exit. Come taste the difference.
It's time for Real Estate 101 with the Karey Brown team from Preferred Advisors.
Good Saturday morning to you. This is Karey Brown. I'm an associate broker with eXp Realty and the Preferred Advisors team. And I am here with Jim Garrison of State Farm. Good morning, Jim.
Hey, good morning, Karey. How are you doing?
I am good. So in the home buying process, homeowners insurance is a big part of that. And we're noticing with the shift in the market, there have definitely been different plans coming out that we felt like it's really important that the consumer understands, especially as a first-time home buyer. And I mean, I'm not a first-time home buyer, and I see it every day, and there's parts of it I don't understand because it's not what I do. So having Jim in to explain it all, I think is super valuable. So Jim, let's talk about your experience as far as being an insurance agent.
I think overall, when we look at the industry, Karey, we've seen some changes here in the last couple of years. More often than not, we see some reduction in coverage, particularly on the roof surface. There's a couple of companies, larger companies, that are changing how they compensate for roof loss, particularly 10 or 15 years after that roof has been in place. So, for instance, I buy a house that's 5 years old, and I have a claim 10 or 15 years from now. I start out with replacement cost coverage on that roof. I've got good coverage. But then some companies, by the terms of their contract on the homeowner's policy, they change that coverage from replacement cost to what's called actual cash value. So it's a depreciated amount of coverage after sometimes 10 or 15 years with those companies.
So let's put dollar figure to that, because that's what a lot of people understand. Say to repair the roof outright would be $10,000. What would that look like over time?
Let's say it's a $10,000 roof job, and your deductible is $2,000. So with full replacement cost, a $10,000 replacement of that roof minus the $2,000 deductible would end up being $8,000 that would be applied towards replacing your roof, replacing the shingles, replacing the underlayment, the tar paper, etc. With the scenario I just discussed, let's say you're 15 years into it, and all of a sudden your replacement cost coverage on the roof ends up being ACV, or actual cash value. So that same $10,000 roof job, and then you subtract the $2,000, but there's also depreciation. So let's say it's deemed that the roof is 40% worn out, so to speak. So depreciation is 40%. So of that $10,000, $4,000 comes right off the top of that. So you're left with $6,000 minus the $2,000 deductible. All of a sudden, that $8,000 check you think you were going to get now becomes $4,000 because of depreciation on the roof.
So you're out $10,000 to replace, or I'm sorry, $6,000 to replace your roof.
It could be any order of magnitude there, yeah. But it could be $1,000 less than you're expecting because of depreciation, or $5,000 or $6,000 less. So and it depends on how old that roof is, quite frankly.
And are all insurances doing that across the board?
Our company is not doing that for non-tenant homeowners. When you live in your house, when you have a State Farm policy, we have replacement cost coverage on that roof the day that you buy it, 20 years later and 30 years later. So as you move through that process, you can expect replacement cost coverage on that roof. And we also offer a really good discount for impact-resistant shingles. If they're UL Category 4 and they're deemed to be impact-resistant, we offer a very good discount here in the state of Kansas on your homeowner's insurance when you have that impact-resistant shingle on your roof.
So say you're not a State Farm client and you want to make sure that your insurance company is not one of these that are participating in that, what would be the question you call and ask?
I'd call your current agent here in town and say, hey, explain my roof coverage to me 10, 15, 20 years from now. And does it change at any point while I have this homeowner's policy with your organization? Just sit down with your agent and understand it. And, sometimes there's value to clients first starting out that they're okay with bare bones type of coverage for a year or two. But over time, that could end up stinging pretty hard if you have to replace a roof.
Absolutely. Okay, so not going to lie, don't know a whole lot about homeowners insurance. I know a lot about selling houses. So I Googled, what are the top 8 questions that you should ask every insurance agent? So if you were to Google that, this is where you're going to find this lineup. But number 1 on there was deductible. Obviously, whenever you're trying to get the premium low and your payment and everything, deductible is factored into that. What would you suggest? Taking a hit on the deductible or the premium?
I think if you know in the long term that you've got good coverage, particularly for the roof, particularly for other scenarios that can happen, you might take a look at a little higher deductible. Our standard deductibles with my organization is 1%. So on a $100,000 home, the deductible would be $1,000. On a $200,000 home, that'd be a $2,000 deductible. Some people choose to go with a higher deductible, a 2% deductible. So that same $100,000 home would have a $2,000 deductible in that scenario. But oftentimes the trade-off for a little higher deductible, but knowing that you've got very good coverage on your home, you don't want any surprises when there's a claim. So that's more than anything. Go review what you have. Take the time. Take an afternoon or an evening. Maybe you can go visit with your agent on a Saturday morning. We're open on Saturday mornings in my agency. See what you have and understand what you have more than anything, and then make that own decision. Is a reduced premium, paying less from my homeowner's insurance, is it worthwhile for any risks that I got to self-absorb in the time of a claim?
Absolutely. And I know in dealing with housing and credit counseling and the TOTO and all of that, those different programs, they have a really great way of doing. Each month they take out a certain amount that goes into a savings account that goes towards repairs and things like that. That may be one of those things to where you look at your policy now that you're thinking about it and say, okay, what's my deductible, and do I have that sitting in a savings account should I ever need it? Okay, so liability coverage.
That protects you if something tragic happens on your property. Oftentimes it may involve a swimming pool or a trampoline. There's somebody injured while on your property. We've seen liability on a homeowner's be extended because a child got hurt oftentimes. So we recommend at least $100,000, and in most cases $300,000. And a homeowner may also consider a liability umbrella. That protects them. It extends and gives excess liability in case there's a car accident, particularly if there's a fatality in the other car. A liability umbrella will protect you in that scenario where you or one of your family members are driving one of your cars, or if something tragic happens back in the swimming pool or on the trampoline.
Okay, and then personal property.
That's a really good thing to review as well, because oftentimes that coverage can vary from company to company. Oftentimes we'll have personal property coverage at 70% of what the home was insured for. So on that same $100,000 home, we'll extend $70,000 for personal property. There's companies that offer a lesser amount, and that's pretty standard with other companies, maybe 50 cents on the dollar. So for a couple starting out, no kids, that might be sufficient coverage. But oftentimes when you have kids, we all seem to accumulate more stuff as we age, as we have kids. So oftentimes 50% would not be an appropriate amount for personal property coverage, because that's going to cover your furniture, your clothes, basically everything you moved in. When you moved into that home is considered personal property. Even unattached, if they're not built-in appliances will be viewed as personal property as well. So just take a look at that and try to keep a sort of a running tally of what you have for personal property. Oftentimes, I really recommend just taking your iPhone, take your phone and walk around room to room and make a quick video. Save that in the cloud, and the stuff that you have, particularly the electronics, the furniture, some of the higher dollar items, try to keep a running balance of what you have for personal property, because in time of claim, that really makes it much, much easier to move that process forward when you have a visual memory on the iCloud. You took that video, so now you got a visual memory of what you do have. It makes that process a lot easier. Plus, it helps you determine what the appropriate amount of coverage is for personal property on your homeowner's insurance.
And serial numbers, should they take photos of that, or are they really relevant in a claim like that?
It's very helpful. I mean, the year that you bought it, more importantly, if you've got, quite simply, if you've got the receipt, that's just as important as anything else. But yeah, if in the case of a theft, it's certainly better to have model number and serial numbers so that stolen property can be tracked down.
Okay.
And I think you had experience with that one time, maybe, Karey?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My husband's shop got broke into. Yeah. And for businesses, I don't think people really get it. I don't think, well, for one, I don't think thieves care. But if you've been broken more than once, there comes a certain amount of that insurances no longer cover. And it's unfortunate, but the business now ends up footing the entire bill. And so what they'd done is we own Brown's Tree Service, and they had stolen all of our chainsaws. Anybody know a tree service that can function without saws?
Be pretty difficult.
Yeah. So literally within, 24 hours, you've got to fork out $10,000 to $20,000, and not every business can. And I mean, it put a real hurt. That was pretty brutal and not something that, we'd planned on, and had to go out and buy all new saws. And even with the police officers knowing who did it and us even knowing where the stuff was, it's not like you can go steal it back. So it's very unfortunate, and it's hurtful. But, it is what it is. So it's really important for a homeowner because, like I said, thieves don't care.
And you bring up a really good point. You want to differentiate between personal use, personal property, and business property. And it's very, very important in today's world to have two separate policies. If you're running a business out of your home, please consider a business in the home policy. And obviously, if you have a business outside the home with your own storefront, you want to review that on, I would suggest, an annual basis with your insurance professional, just to make sure that your coverage is adequate, because businesses grow, businesses change, and that can be, like you said, if you don't have enough business personal property coverage, if you've got $20,000 of coverage but $40,000 of stuff gets stolen, that's a painful scenario. So please, by all means, review what your business policy, your commercial policy, your workers' comp looks like with your insurance professional. Absolutely.
So we were talking about personal property. It's also really important for renters to understand that the structure of their property it should be insured by the actual owner, which would be your landlord or whoever owns it. But you are responsible for the actual possessions inside, which means you're going to want to have renter's insurance. So let's talk about that.
Renter's insurance is very, very important for anybody. It's here again with personal property. We tend to minimize, well, I've only got $3,000 of stuff, or I only got $10,000 worth of stuff. But if it's all gone all at once because of a fire or tornado, it adds up in a hurry. We had a school teacher, a personal experience about 12, 14 years ago, and her apartment complex had a fire, and it happened to be 2 days before school started. So she had some supplies for the kids. She had just revamped her wardrobe. She was ready to go to school and be a teacher there in August, and the fire happened. So fortunately, we was able to write her a check, and she was able to go the same day, and she was able to go to replace her stuff, even though she moved to a different apartment in the same complex, and her world was turned upside down for a few days. She did have the peace of mind she could go replace her stuff within 24 hours. So the renter's policy, and in that case, it was like $12 a month for that premium. So it's really low-cost coverage to make sure your personal stuff is taken care of, whether it be theft or fire or tornado or whatever cause of loss. And it gives you a discount on your auto insurance too. So if you got a couple autos and you rent, sometimes that renter's insurance is very, very low cost because of multi-line discounts.
And we'll talk about that more. Okay, so premium. Whenever you're looking at the premiums, cheap isn't always better. So let's talk about that.
It comes down to what you choose and the level of coverage that you choose. There's endorsements that people choose to add, backup of sewer and drain. State Farm adds some other endorsements as well. We have ID restoration, and we have service line endorsement. It comes down to what the homeowner chooses and what they want. So I think here again, just before you jump in and try to do this process over the phone to make sure your home's covered, take a few minutes and go see your insurance professional and make sure you know what you're purchasing. It's like any other major purchase. Saving $100 may cost you thousands of dollars in the future. A lower premium may not always be the best scenario.
We're going to be right back after a word from our sponsors, and we'll talk more about the different things that you need to know before you accept an insurance policy.
When someone has a passion for what they do, it comes through in the product they provide their customers. Just ask LaRocco's Pizza's new owner, Jason Johnson, about their crust. They make it every day and let it rise for a minimum of 24 hours before they use it for their pizza. And his staff doesn't want to do anything they won't be the best at, and you can taste it in their pizza. LaRocco's Pizza, just a half block north of the I-470 and Gage Boulevard exit. Come taste the difference.
Thanks for joining us again. This is Karey Brown, Associate Broker at eXp Realty and the Preferred Advisors team. Before the break, Jim and I were talking, and he had mentioned sewer line coverage, and we see this so often. I don't think people really realize, obviously you get how important a sewer line is, but how many of those are still older in the city. There's still a lot of cast iron. There's still Orangeburg, which is basically wrapped paper, that over time, I mean, it's great, and it's lasted, for a long, long time, but now all of a sudden it's compromised and you've got a problem. So sewer line coverage, which is an endorsement you mentioned, how much does that cover?
Karey, our service line coverage not only takes care of sewer lines, but it can take care of incoming water lines as well and buried electrical lines. So our service line coverage with State Farm is very inexpensive, right at $2 a month or $23 annually for that endorsement. For instance would be, let's say there's a freshwater line, and between the meter and your home, that water line was unfortunately run under your driveway. So you've got to maybe tear out part of your driveway. You've got a couple of days of backhoe time, obviously a lot of labor, and that bill ends up being $10,000. So you're replacing the fresh water line between your water meter and your home. The bill is $10,000. If you have the service line coverage endorsement with State Farm, of that $10,000, there's a $500 deductible. State Farm covers the remainder of that, $9,500. So, and the same with the sewer line. But the limit, I would stress, the limit is $10,000 of coverage and a $500 deductible.
And on a normal one, and I've seen at this point closed over 1,000 homes, and I've seen tons of sewer lines have to be redone. It's very rare that we see them even hit $10,000. It's more the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 range. So that's really good. There are some weird ones out there, though, where they have to cut through and go across alleyways or go down and around and through someone's backyard to get to a city main. Literally, I've had a deal before that off of 10th Street downtown that 3 houses on the corner apparently were a family owned originally, built by one family, and we were checking the sewer line, and what we found was it just kept going and going and going, and it just never ended anywhere. Come to find out, it was actually a septic system that 3 houses were tied to inside of the city. And so when we looked at, can we get tied into the city main, and we could not because of where it was. So, crazy things happen, guys. It's just the way that it is.
There's some crazy scenarios out there, that's for sure.
So next in the lineup is replacement costs and actual cash value.
Oftentimes, Karey, when we look at replacement costs versus actual cash value, that really pertains to the roof more often than not. So as I mentioned, there's a couple companies that have made a switch to having replacement cost coverage on the roof for a period of a number of years, whether it's 10 years or 15 years, and then that roof coverage switches to ACV coverage, a lesser amount of coverage in most every case. So that's probably the language. If a person's working with a new company or a first-time home buyer, they certainly want to understand what that roof coverage is.
Okay. Sublimits. What is a sublimit?
Sublimit, like, for instance, we were discussing the service line coverage earlier. A sublimit might be that in the case of the service line, there's a $10,000 limit. So that's considered a sublimit of coverage on your homeowner's policy. And it can also have a different deductible. In the same case for the service line coverage, instead of having the overall 1 or maybe 2% deductible on the homeowners, the deductible for service line coverage is just $500. So sublimits, you want to be cognizant of that. Oftentimes they will also apply to jewelry and furs, maybe to chinaware or silverware, special silverware or goldware that you might have, and firearms as well. Those are some of the items that would have sublimits on a homeowner's policy.
And those would basically be separate riders. Is that correct?
It's usually, in most cases, they'll be included with the policy itself. For instance, there's coverage for jewelry and furs, almost any homeowners, but it's going to have a sublimit. Whereas endorsements, the service line coverage has its own sublimit, so it can be part of the policy language or it may be by endorsement. So really good questions to cover with your insurance professional.
So what are the things that would typically be a separate rider?
A separate, with State Farm, I can speak to State Farm, obviously. ID restoration is a separate rider. Backup of sewer and drain is a separate rider. Earthquake coverage is a separate endorsement. We also have the service line coverage and home systems coverage as well, and those are by endorsement. So those are some of the most popular endorsements, and more people are looking into earthquake coverage as well. So might have that conversation with your insurance professional.
One of the things that I talked about recently with an attorney, a family had inherited a house. So obviously there was no loan. And so they've inherited it. They didn't think to get insurance on the property. And so, obviously there's no payment being made. It's paid for. And there was a fire. And so obviously there was no adequate homeowner's insurance. There wasn't any. And so now that there's a complete loss and an instance of where they didn't know how to review the homeowner's insurance policy and found out that they were nowhere near covered enough. They just used the bank's insurance instead of actually going out and getting a quote. So it's really important. I know that for sell by owners, all the rage and things like that, but there's a lot that goes into it. And homeowners insurance is very important. Having somebody help you track all the things that you need to know. And, I can't tell you how many times people have closed on houses and they've still got premiums coming out on paying on a house they don't even own anymore because they forgot to cancel the insurance. And even a few times where they continue to pay utilities because it was on the list. It's just so many things were going on. It's a very stressful time. You've got a million things coming at you, and you have to pack, and get kids into new schools and so many crazy things that are going on in your life at that point. It's really good to have somebody on your side making sure, hey, did you remember to do this? And because of, privacy acts and stuff like that, we can't even do it for you anymore. So the best we can do is try and help you remember. So just think that through. And same thing with wills and things like that. If you did not listen to mine and Verdon's radio show, you can go to our website and listen, TopekaHomeAdvisors.com, or check us out on Facebook, which is Preferred Advisors. That one, I learned a ton because there are so many things that people think they're doing right and they aren't. And it's going to cost somebody in the end. So definitely, same thing with your doing things yourself and not asking questions and not knowing what to ask can cut you. So having a good insurance agent like Jim to ask those questions and say, hey, what should I be doing? This is what I have in my house. What should I ask for in coverage? Do I need sewer replacement? There are places in town with emphatically that answer would be yes, so asking those questions are very, very important. So remember that. Okay, so let's talk about bundling insurance because I know that saves you money. Yeah,
it's when you have multiple policies with most any insurance companies, it allows you to have multi-line discounts, or if you have multiple cars, multiple vehicles, multiple car discounts as well. So when you think of 2 or 3 vehicles and the homeowners and a liability umbrella, when you bring those policies together, it does give you more in discounts. Other discounts that make a big difference, particularly on the homeowners, is an impact-resistant roof. I know this is the second time I've mentioned it, but in Kansas, that's a huge discount, and it's becoming very prevalent with most any company. So if you're considering changing your roof, regardless of who your insurance company is, please ask the question about, hey, if I put these heavier, thicker, UL rated 4 shingles on my roof, does it give me a discount? And if so, how much? And oftentimes, those shingles are a little more expensive, no doubt about it. But they pay for themselves in 2 or 3 years oftentimes because your homeowner's premium would be less. And you may have the opportunity never to have to replace that roof again since they're thicker, heavier shingles, no doubt about it.
Even being near a fire hydrant, within so many feet of a fire hydrant, doesn't that give you a discount also? You know,
it comes down to how close you are to a municipality, how close you are to the firehouse, having a fire hydrant. And there's several things that go into that fire class rating, no doubt about it.
Yeah, so just sometimes it's asking the questions if you don't know what all might give you that discount, you know. Age of driver?
Yeah, when it comes to car insurance, there's a multitude of factors that come into play. And the same that's always been true throughout the years, having a good driving record, minimal amount or no speeding tickets, and driving safe. That still counts for the most in determining what that car insurance is. Of course, a higher value car, those insurance rates are going to be higher, and it's no secret that a 14 or 15 or 16-year-old driver on a car does make a difference as well. Those premiums are higher because, unfortunately, I've got a youthful driver in my own household. They're more apt to have an accident. And all we can do as parents is coach them and say, hey, leave that phone alone. And you can also take a look at some new technology many companies are using called telematics. Everybody's got a different name for it. In our organization, we call it Drive Safe and Save. And what it does, it's a module that either plugs into the diagnostics port below your dash, or it's a standalone device that syncs up with your phone every time that you get in. So through Bluetooth, it determines what time of day you're driving, your acceleration, your braking, how you make left turns and right turns. And based on those driving characteristics, you can really have your very own rate based on how you drive as an individual and how that car is driven. So that's called telematics, and it's relatively new to the industry in the last 4 or 5 years, but most every company is starting to offer that. And for those folks with good driving and good driving characteristics, it can be a significant discount. I personally have a pickup truck, and I don't drive it much. I mean, it's maybe 2,000 miles a year. But telematics, our Drive Safe and Save program, cuts our premium almost in half on that pickup truck.
Wow. And I know when my kids were younger, we would provide GPA, the report cards, and that helped.
Absolutely. State Farm has 2 other discounts, one related to their grades. If it's above a 3.0, we have a good student discount, and also a program called Steer Clear, and that's an online program that the youth goes through, some video vignettes, and they keep track of their driving when they drive with their parents. So that Steer Clear discount in combination with a good student discount can be a very significant discount to the parents as well.
Absolutely. So, Jim, what else would you like the consumer to know?
Well, Karey, thanks so much about talking about everyday risks. We talked about homeowners. We talked about renter's insurance. We talked about auto coverage and some of the specific discounts. But don't forget to think about your future dreams as well. Think about what you're doing for savings, for education planning for your kids, and also retirement planning. Oftentimes, many of us get to 50 or 52 or 54 years of age and think, oh my gosh, retirement might just be 12 or 14 years down the road. So don't let that go ignored. I appreciate the time today, and I can it's easy to reach me at jim@jimgarrison.biz, jim@jimgarrison.biz. You can reach me at the office, 272-0332, or we're right at the roundabout on the northeast corner of 29th and Urish. We're diagonal from the Dillons there at 29th and Urish.
And if you're looking to buy or sell, give us a call at 785-213-5188. Also, we are going to be hosting an buyer's seminar. We have one in Spanish, one in Swahili, and one in English that we will be hosting. So be sure and watch our Facebook page, Preferred Advisors Team, and also our website, TopekaHomeAdvisors.com. to see when those classes will be. If you want to be put onto the list, give us a call, 785-213-5188.
Thank you for listening to Real Estate 101 with the Karey Brown team from Preferred Advisors.